It's a great honor to come back. I owe a lot to SDSU. I'm still working in the business that I founded that was a business plan through these competitions 10 years ago. So every day I go to work. It's the first time I've had to put on a jacket in about 7 years too. So I recommend the surf industry. It's great. But we have a great group of judges here today, so I want to take the time to introduce them. This is my first time to meet them, so hopefully I pronounced their names right. But I did get to look at the resumes, and it's a really impressive group this year. First here we have Kerry Mack. He has a real estate fund local in San Diego. He's also on the board of Torrey Pines Bank and has generously donated to the program. And he has been on the board since the formation in 2003. Sitting next to him is Dr. Martha Dennis. She has been in telecommunications as an entrepreneur, technologist, and VC and corporate director for her 35-year career. Currently, she is a principal at Gordian Knot and currently serves on a variety of board of directors. Most recently, she was a venture partner with Windward Ventures. That's a very, very big one here in town. And she co-founded Pacific Communication Sciences and Waveware Communications. Next, we have Mr. Peter Shaw. Mr. Shaw founded Shaw Management Advisors International. It's a San Diego-based international advisory firm that provides services for senior management and venture capitals and entrepreneurs. In January 2010, Shaw Management joined Procopio, Corey, Hargraves, and Savage to create Procopio Business Advisors. He has an extensive background, also leading Aconic Systems, a local digital acquisition or data acquisition company here in town. Next, we have Ricardo DeSantos. Ricardo is a senior director of business development at Qualcomm, corporate new business development group. His role is focused on developing new growth and developing growth opportunities in Qualcomm. He brings more than 15 years of experience in new business development and entrepreneurship and corporate strategy. He also has a background in automotive, financial services, and healthcare. He helped launch 2 wireless consulting firms prior to joining Qualcomm. Thank you. And then we have Pratik Shah. Pratik joined McNerney Partners in 2004, and he's currently a board member for a number of biotech firms. Thomas McNerney is currently moving their office from San Francisco down into San Diego to be closer to their core market base. Prior to joining the firm, he was the CBO and co-founder of Clapsys Incorporated, a biopharmaceutical company focused on the discovery and clinical development of new medicines for cancer, inflammation, metabolic diseases using proprietary automation technologies. He also has a PhD in biochemistry and molecular biology from UCI and an MBA from the University of Chicago. Thank you. And now, just to keep things moving along, I'd like to welcome the team from the University of Michigan, MEMStim.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Angelique Johnson, and my teammate Chris Kadad and I are here. Andrew Smith is the 3rd team member. He couldn't make it with us today. I want to tell you about our company, MEMStim. We sell neurostimulator leads to medical device companies. Now, what's a neurostimulator and what does it do? Well, there are billions of nerves in the human body, and these nerves control not only everything we do, but everything we sense. Unfortunately, sometimes due to hereditary or external factors, these nerves malfunction. And this can lead to debilitating diseases and disorders such as Parkinson's disease, chronic pain, heart failure, hearing loss, blindness, and paralysis, just to name a few of the hundreds of medical conditions that can arise. Pharmaceutical treatments exist for some of these, but for many they don't, such as blindness. In the pharmaceutical space, it can cost upwards of $1 billion, if not more, money to do research and development. And the financial payback when you have generics undercutting your profits by 40 to 50 just isn't high enough for them to investigate and put money into generating drugs. So medical device companies have seized upon this opportunity and created neurostimulator devices to offer treatments for these conditions. A neurostimulator operates by directly stimulating the nerves of the body. There are 2 such examples of devices that I'll present today. One is the cochlear implant. As you can see on the left, the cochlear implant is implanted in the ear. It directly stimulates the auditory nerve to restore sound to the profoundly deaf. The spinal cord stimulator is implanted in the back. It stimulates nerves of the spine to block chronic pain signals that come down from the brain. These are just two examples. They're also used for epilepsy, they're used for depression, they're used for obesity, and many other applications. There are two main components to this technology: the electronics, which generates the electrical pulses, and the nerve stimulator lead, which is MEMStim's core competency. This lead interfaces to the nerves in the body and passes those pulses on to the nerves. The nerve stimulator lead right now, as it's developed, is done through hand assembly. It's very costly, it has low throughput, and high overhead costs. And this is why. They're doing everything with hand assembly under a microscope. As you can imagine, this is a very tedious process. You have individual technicians under a microscope soldering together wires. With MEMStim's automated process, we're going to give them a 25% reduction in cost and improve the performance by orders of magnitude. I'll get a little bit more to that later. This technique, in addition to being tedious, high cost, and being a huge manufacturing pain, it stifles a market adoption. The end user doesn't have high enough performance and satisfaction in technology to increase the adoption rate beyond 1%. Right now, it's currently less than 1%. And manufacturers in this medical space are actively seeking ways to improve the lead so that they can improve both the reduce the surgical risk and improve the performance of the technology. Reduce surgical risk is seen in two ways. One, they want to increase the flexibility of the lead, and the other is they want to increase the durability of the lead. I'll give you an example. This is a cochlear implant. They're using a complex wiring pattern, again, doing this by hand under a microscope, to make the device more flexible. If it's more flexible, when you put it in the ear, it doesn't damage the residual hearing. That means they can use it in younger patients, they can use it in people that otherwise aren't eligible because they do have some residual hearing, and they don't want to lose that with the cochlear implant. The other thing is durability. Spinal cord stimulators are implanted in the spine. 27% of the time they break because you're bending the back multiple times. It's not flexible enough. It's a huge concern for the medical device companies. In addition to reducing surgical risk, they want to increase the performance. One way that the companies see in doing this is by increasing the number of sites. Medtronic has gone from a spinal cord stimulator lead that started out as 4 sites. They're approaching 20 sites now. In the cochlear space, they started out with 16 sites. Advanced Bionics, they now have 128 virtual sites. It's not actually changing the lead itself, but it's changing the electronics. And we're going to give them a solution where they can change the lead, and that'll give better performance. I'm going to play a sound clip.
The wife helped her husband. The wife helped her husband. The wife helped her husband. The wife helped her husband.
The wife helped her husband.
So in that sound clip, you heard a man repeating a phrase. In the beginning, it was very grainy, very robotic. That's what current cochlear implant users hear every day. This is how they go about life. Usually they use the technology and they lip read and they do sign language. Our technology is going to push towards that clear sound. If you think about it in a scale from 0 to 10, right now they're at 0 with that grainy sound. Our technology is about a 7, 8 in the performance increase. How do we do this? We use automated manufacturing processes. Well, we use microelectromechanical systems processing by fabricating hundreds of these on a single wafer at a time. I'm going to pass around a wafer, and we're also passing out a prototype device. We're able to control the parameters so that we can get more electrodes on the array. Also, the cost is significantly reduced because you aren't having one personnel assembling one lead under a microscope. You have a handful of personnel, a room full of robots doing hundreds of leads at a time. With this, we're able to get a 10x reduction in electrode size and a 10x increase in the number of sites. Again, this translates to performance. Also, we're able to tailor the flexibility of the device to be anything of our choosing. We have 2 orders of magnitude, actually, difference in our flexibility from our technology to theirs in the commercial space. This is the current stage of our product. As you can see in the blue boxes passed around, we have developed a prototype device. The silver dots that you see are electrodes. This is actually incorporated in a commercial molding. We integrated with Coco Corporation, early stage research with them. And what you have right now is kind of a collaboration between the two of us. We're using FDA-approved materials. That's our main competitive advantage in this process. If you don't have FDA-approved materials, if you're using silicon like a lot of other companies, then you're not able to put this in a clinical application and have it survive in the body. It's toxic. We have a patent pending through the University of Michigan. I'm the primary inventor, so we have first rights to that patent, and we're currently negotiating a licensing agreement with the university. And we demonstrated this actually works in preclinical trials using animal studies. So we know the technology works. We're just finalizing the prototype. For our competition in this space, Great Batch Medical is the only company now that exists which is operating the same way we want to operate, selling nerve stimulator leads to medical device companies. However, they're still using hand assembly. They still only have a maximum of 16 electrodes. They're still very expensive. As far as other companies that are trying to do a MEMS approach, which is similar to nanotechnology in our approach, they're using non-medical grade materials like silicon that are toxic in the body and haven't been FDA approved to go in the body over long periods of time. And so that's the huge drawback. They can't use their technology in the medical space. Also, some of them do have high costs associated with it. There's one device with investigational use, but again, it only has one electrode. And so we're well positioned in this market. The team that we're going to use to actually push this technology through and to make our company successful consists of Chris Kadat over there. He's our CEO. He has 6 years experience in the semiconductor industry. There's Andrew Smith. He's our COO. He has 8 years experience in medical device startups doing neurostimulator devices. There's myself. I'm the Chief Technology Officer. I invented the technology, and I've spent 10 years in the neurostimulator research area. We have a technical advisory board. Dr. Kenzel Wise heads that board. He's sometimes considered the godfather of MEMS. He co-founded the company ISIS, Inc., which does MEMS devices commercially. We have Joseph Giacchino. He's our industry advisor. He used to work at Ford for several years, and he pushed 30 years actually, and he pushed through MEMS accelerometers and pressure sensors on automobile applications. So they went from research stage to full-scale production in the millions. We want to include advisors in the medical space and the clinical space. We definitely want a business development advisor and somebody that has experience working with medical devices in the product development life cycle.
So nerve stimulation is big. Currently today, the overall market for nerve stimulation is $3.6 billion. For us, that means a market of over $500 million by 2015, more than doubling from where it's at. What's happening here is there's an explosion of treatments for these diseases, epilepsy, Parkinson's. And one great example is a cochlear implant treating profound hearing loss. Each year, 200,000 patients could get cochlear implants, but this past year, only 30,000 people got them. There's a huge backlog. For this reason, we're going to focus on cochlear implants as our first segment. It's a huge market. In the cochlear segment market, the leads are the most complex and highest percentage of the device cost. Because they're the most complex, with hand manufacturing, it causes the most manufacturing pain for our customers. Here, we can deliver the most value. Within the cochlear segment, we're going to focus on Advanced Bionics as our first customer. We've had initial discussions with them, understanding what they're looking for. We've strategically chosen not to look at the market leader, Cochlear Limited, who we've had engagements with in the past because they have such a large market share. We want a player who's hungrier and is looking to change and grow their market share. Today, Advanced Bionics has 10%. How we're going to do this, we're going to put a twofold strategy. The first portion of the strategy is going to consist of duplicating their current product exactly. And the reason we're going to do that is to minimize our FDA approval risk. We want to deliver to them a manufacturing solution. In the first year, with 20% of their manufacturing capability, we could deliver them a cost savings of over $1 million or increase their gross margin point 1.3 points. Subsequently, after we scale up through manufacturing, prove out our supply chain, we want to deliver a technology solution, something that enables them to do something they couldn't before. For instance, they want to go and treat people with moderate hearing loss, who they can't today because the leads are inflexible. When they implant the current leads today, it damages residual hearing. If we can give them a solution that's more flexible, they can grow their market share from beyond 10%. So where do we fall in this industry? We've been very strategic about this. As a supplier to medical device companies, we are limiting our exposure to the FDA approval process. We're using our core competency of product development, supply chain, and manufacturing, and we're going to help some medical device companies with their core competencies of understanding the clinician's needs, going through the FDA approval process, and marketing these devices. And for us, one of the big reasons or ways we're doing this is we're delivering a device that has the same exact materials as the current leads, so we can go through a 510K or a PMA supplement. The operations of our firm can be broken down into 5 main portions. The first portion consists of research and development. In this phase, we're going to build building blocks, so the biocompatible arrays, wireless capability, sensing and control, microfluidics. These are like Legos. The second portion of our business is going to consist of taking these Legos and consulting with our customer to create a design. So we're going to build a specific house for each customer. The customer owns a house. So for Cochlear, it's the spacing of the electrodes. We own the individual pieces of that. We're going to then take that design and we're going to outsource it to a manufacturing foundry. We've engaged foundries such as MEMS Exchange, done through preliminary quoting to understand what required for that. After we outsource these devices, we're going to bring them back in-house and we're going to do 100% testing. There's one level of testing that goes on at the foundry, optical inspection and electrical inspection. The second level of testing we're going to go is 25% destructive testing in-house. And the final portion of our value chain is sales and marketing. This is going to be a relatively small portion of our value chain because we have a few customers. We have 12 to 13 customers, Boston Scientific, Medial. One of the key things about our firm is we're going to operate in a very capital efficient manner. By outsourcing all of our manufacturing, we don't need to buy semiconductor equipment. These are $5 million pieces of equipment. And the second portion, or the second way we're doing this, is through a partnership with the University of Michigan. We're using their nano fabrication lab. We don't need to buy the capital equipment. We can rent time there. So if you look at the financials of our firm, we're going to have our first sale in 2013. That's based on a 24-month sales cycle with our first customer, Advanced Bionics. So what that includes is a year of product development, so an iteration of taking our proof of concept to meet their electrode spacing and their flexibility requirements so we can duplicate exactly what they have. The second portion of that is for the FDA approval process, PMA supplement, and allows them time to integrate it in with their current devices. If you look at 2014, we're going to go cash flow positive, and that's based on the assumption that we have the second customer, Cochlear Limited. In 2015, our revenue scale up to $100 million on 51,000 units. So if our firm can be broken down into three main stages. The first portion of the stage is funded by the founders. We're raising $50,000 internally. Currently, we've contributed $27,000, and that's to secure IP and finish the prototype proof of concept development. The second stage is going to be through an angel investor ask of $500,000, and that's going to occur in Q3, and we're timing that with completion of the manufacturing process. That's going to be used to fund development of the first customer prototype, take it to a point where it's production worthy. The final next stage is actually a Series A of $5 million. That's going to allow us to transition from a one-off to volume production, so qualify at our outsourced foundries, capital for supply chain qualification, and then capital equipment for testing. And the final portion of our final segment of our firm is to become a preferred supplier for our customers. We want to be the supplier of choice for Medial, Advanced Bionics, St. Jude, delivering solutions that they currently don't have. And in 2015, we see an acquisition via exit there. So what I'm asking today is we're looking at an initial investment in Q3 of $500,000. This is a very attractive offer. At the point where we're asking for the investment, we are going to have a proof of concept that is ready to be transitioned to a full product with shown efficacy. So we're looking at an exit in 5 years, either of one of two manners. Either through one of our customers who wants to protect this technology. Boston Scientific does not want Medtronic to get this. Medtronic has 60% market share. If Boston Scientific gets this, they can go after Medtronic's spinal cord stimulator business and significantly grow theirs. The other option is through one of our competitors, such as Great Batch Medical. In the past, they've actually done acquisitions of previous hardware companies to supplement their portfolio, and they're actually looking into partnerships in the MEMS foundry area. At exit, we're looking at a valuation between $300 and $480 million. That's based on comparable MEMS companies from the automotive space, the low end, and the high end is looking at comparable medical device companies. So in summary, we have an attractive investment opportunity with an 18x return on the angel investment portion. At this point, we have demonstrated efficacy. We have devices in your hand that work. Angelique has been working on this during her PhD thesis for 5 years. At the technology node, our competitors are immature. Nobody has the ability to build biocompatible arrays. Our patents have that. We have the secret sauce in what she's doing. And the final thing is, we're not only delivering a manufacturing solution, we're going to deliver an enabling technology that changes where nerve stimulators are used. Not only hearing, blindness, obesity, depression. This is a growing market. It's going to be very exciting. And to that, I open it up to questions.
Okay, so for the first question, I'd like to start with Pratik Shah.
Okay. Given the clinical advantages that you think having a higher electrode density will provide, why would you start with duplicating what a current product already does, when in fact you may have a lot less wiggle room for what your materials or your flexibility have to perform relative to addressing market segments where you have a very new offering, right? That patients just have zero choices, and there'll be a lot more tolerance for issues with the first generation product in that setting. So could you explain the rationale for that?
Our main focus here is to get our products to market as soon as possible, reduce our exposure, but also to help our customers. If we duplicate their current product, same exact materials, same exact shape, same exact electrode position, it's a manufacturing change, it's a PMA supplement. If we make dramatic changes, it may mean a full clinical trials because it's something that's completely different from what they've done. We want to establish that predicate device, and that's our objective there.
Okay. And other quick question is, are you planning to do exclusive relationships with individual players in a given segment, or is the idea to do non-exclusive relationships with multiple stimulator companies?
The idea is to do non-exclusive relationships. And one of the examples here is we own the building blocks, the biocompatibility. In the cochlear space, like Cochlear Limited actually patented how far apart the electrodes are. But if you look at the actual technology, it's very similar from company to company. It's electrode spacing, the flexibility of the tip of the electrode.
So we see is that the manufacturing is the same with each company, hand assembly under a microscope, it's just what they do with that. And we're offering them a manufacturing solution which is portable to multiple companies depending on their own unique design, which they'll own. They'll own the IP on the end product, just not on the technology and the manufacturing platform.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, Ricardo.
So I got a question on the manufacturing side. Is there still a risk there? How confident are you that the yields will be there? I mean, dealing in MEMS is great. Usually it is a better technology on paper, but often the yield thing is difficult.
Yeah. So in our area, we actually have really good yield. Right now, when I produce it in the university facilities, which external companies do use, at University of Michigan, I'm getting yields of 80%. The difference between what we're doing and typical MEMS devices is usually people think of MEMS, you're talking about accelerometers and pressure sensors. Those devices are very sensitive to any minute, you could be off by a micron in your design, could have a speck of, debris or something on it, and that can significantly change the performance. We're essentially doing metal lines set down. We don't have that high tolerance with our devices. So we have a lot more wiggle room.
Peter?
So I'd like to just talk about or ask some questions on the sales side. Mm-hmm. So the strategy, correct me if I'm wrong before I ask the question, it seems like you've targeted a small number of large companies. Mm-hmm. An emphasis on a small number.
Yes.
The potential market in terms of dollars is large, but the potential target customers is relatively small.
Yeah.
Yes.
And you've targeted AB as your first customer. So I've got a couple-part question here, but where are you in that process with AB?
Mm-hmm. So we've engaged with Advanced Bionics. We've had a few phone conversations because we're in Michigan and they're in California. And we're setting up a meeting to kind of go to their site and do a demo with them. We're also in the process of assembling a non-disclosure agreement with them so that we can give them a little bit more information on what we do. Nothing proprietary, of course, but just to let them know what we can really offer them.
So you're pretty early in that process?
We're pretty early in the engagement stage.
So it looks to me like your plan, your business plan is I've got some, not questions, but I understand the manufacturing issues and some of the science. Mm-hmm. But staying on the sales and marketing, mm-hmm. Your plan appears to really require relatively quick traction with AB. Mm-hmm. And then as a second step, getting the 900-pound gorilla was the large company.
Cochlear Limited?
Yeah, Cochlear. Mm-hmm. And that's great if you can get it, but I mean, there's obviously pitfalls in doing that. Yeah. Do you have a plan B?
Yeah. So there's also reaching into the spinal cord stimulation space and going through Medtronic. It's a smaller space financially for us, smaller market. However, the restrictions, technological restrictions, are much more open. So they only have 4 electrodes. It's a simpler device. Medtronic has a lot of different medical devices. The spinal cord isn't the biggest component of their company, and so that may be another market that we can address.
Have you talked to anybody on the spinal side?
We haven't talked to anybody in the spinal cord side as far as engaging them as a customer. We've done a lot of fact-finding with them, but we haven't engaged them as a customer.
And other than the information you gave us today, when you make that sales presentation, mm-hmm. Whether it's at AB or Cochlear or wherever, do you have some data that is there hard scientific data?
Yeah, we have. I've been doing this for 5 years, and so as a result of that, we've done lots of animal tests. We have mechanical testing. We've sent out our devices, and they've been flex tested. And mainly what they're going to be interested in is durability and functionality. And a lot of these companies, when they start out, they'll do animal testing. We know the popular animal models in the space, cats and guinea pigs, which is what they focus on, preferably cats because the anatomy is closer to humans. And so we'll show our results from that. And we'll also show them the mechanical durability, flexing and bending, and we have a good idea of the different radius of the cochlea and what they need to have the device stand against.
Okay, thank you.
So you said you had about a year left of development, if I understood correctly. What are the technical risks in that area?
Yeah. So we have, that year includes 6 months of finishing our prototype, but then we want to do 2 stages. So we'll send it out to Advanced Bionics, and we want them to become comfortable with it. Test it, because they have their own mechanical testing facilities. Test it, send it back to us, let us know their feeling about it. We project that one risk will be, we'll make what we think is a spectacular device. We'll test it in-house. We'll give it to them, and they'll test in their facility, and they'll do some weird flex test that we haven't heard of, and it may break it or it may do something to our device. But we kind of have already foreseen that, well, there's ways to make the material more durable and ways to get around that. And so that could be a risk as far as sending it back and getting a negative result. So we've kind of have 2 stages of testing built in. Send it out, they test it, they get it back. We're going to modify the design to what they want. Also, some of it could just be the shape isn't right for them. We don't have proprietary information on really what they want from that standpoint. We can characterize that, and then we're going to do a second round of 3 months where we're going to send it out to them and have it tested, and that's how we're trying to mitigate some of those technological risks.
And can you give me some insight without giving it away?
Yeah.
What's your magic? What's your magic sauce?
So it's twofold, well, maybe threefold. So there's the IP, and the IP covers the materials we use and how we use those materials. So we're making neurostimulator leads, we're making them out of specific materials, and we're also building them up in a certain way, because using those materials, they're not standard MEMS materials, and so it's not a lot of proficiency and a lot of public knowledge about how to use those, and we've developed a way of using these special materials for that processing. The third thing is how we the manufacturing process itself. So it's kind of like Coca-Cola has a secret recipe. It's kind of hidden, nobody tells you. It's a trade secret. And so when we work with the external foundries, we actually go out and train their personnel on how to do our process. We have a non-disclosure agreement with them, so they can't come back and use that against us. And then that's the kind of 3 components. The secret sauce is a trade secret, and then the IP that we have, which covers the materials and how we build those materials up.
And your 25% cost reduction is because?
I can quantify that. So currently, it costs our customers $2,700 to make a lead, so looking at the cochlear space. So that's pure manufacturing. It's insanely high. We're going to sell them a device for $2,000. Based on our quoting and individual research and development cost at University of Michigan, it costs us about $300 to make the devices. So that cost reduction we're going to deliver to them, but we're also going to see significant margins on our side. And really, all this is based on they're spending 40% of their headcount on manufacturing, either the lead or the can, and just integrating things, and we want to simplify it for them.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. You had a chart that you presented earlier. It was called Funding Milestones. Can you bring that up again and show that to us for a minute? And while you're doing that, a question on the technology. Have you had opportunity to retain independent validation of the product's efficacy and the efficiencies in production that you've explained to us here?
So we had, in the beginning, this started out just as a pure research project. And so I'm sure as all you guys are familiar, sometimes industries will want to keep a tap into the market and see what's going on in the research space. So Cochlear Corporation actually, in the early stage, as a research partner with us, had taken some of our early stage prototypes and tested them in their facilities and tried to integrate them a little bit into their processing, and they gave very promising results on those. They found some things that we have to fix on it, which is why we're using that 6 month of further prototype development, but that kind of gave us a promising outlook as far as whether this will work with the commercial process.
You've retained documentation associated with all that, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Right. With respect to the $500,000 in capital, can you drill down on that in terms of how much of that you expect is required to complete your prototype, to secure your patent, to go through the FDA approval process, and where are we at the end of that spend in that timeline?
So that at Q3 September timeframe, about 1/3 or half of that money is going to be used to secure the IP, so the domestic patent, and then put a down payment on the international patent. The second, probably 30% of that is going to be used for the research and development at the university. We're looking at a cost of about $22,000 per month to have one contract process engineer work full-time in the university labs. That includes all the machine time, all the costs to develop the units. The second 20% of that is going to be used for external laboratory validation of our devices, and then preclinical testing that goes along with the devices that we're sending out to our customers. So we really want to go step by step with them. So they're doing something at their lab, we want to be able to duplicate the results internally. And that'll take us to approximately May, June timeframe. At that point, we'd have a device that's ready to transition to volume production. It's a production-worthy device. Then the next ask would be to fund the foundry qualification, which is about $750,000 per foundry.
Okay, so it gets you into a very significant risk stage of the development of your company, but certainly not through substantial risks to bring your product to the marketplaces.
Correct.
And I'm reading your plan, and so from an investment standpoint, am I right in your proposal being that for that $500,000 in seed funding, you're willing to offer a 4% equity stake in the company?
That's what we're looking at right now, and we're looking for, one of the things we're trying to quantify is, at that point when we go for the initial ask, we're going to have a developed process. The production, there's still production risk, but there's the prototype risk is removed. Can we build it repeatably and reproducibly in the university lab is reduced and eliminated at that point. It's really just transitioning from one foundry to another foundry.
And then also engagement with the customer at that point. We'll have customers lined up. It's just a matter of doing the full-scale manufacturing.
Yeah, I think it would be helpful for you to comment on how you derive a 4% equity interest when you're providing capital that really doesn't get you through the risk stage of your company and right? And it's also an equity interest that needs to be defined not only in terms of amount, but how your equity investor can understand controls that would be placed on their interest, assuming that 4% was anywhere near the equity stake that would be necessary to justify the risk that's being assumed.
And this is one of our funding approaches, and we're actually looking at alternative means, because one of our concerns is having a fundraising round almost a year after the first raising round is going to be difficult on us and taxing on us. So we may do a larger initial ask. Our first in this plan was the initial ask was $500,000, and we're evaluating other approaches.
Yeah, how did you derive the 4%?
So really we're trying to base the pre-money valuation on where we were at with the product development cycle and what type of risks we had eliminated. We had eliminated the proof of concept. We had something that worked with efficacy, and that's kind of where that came from. Okay. And that's part of the reason why we moved that first funding milestone out to September timeframe. So we could go to our investor and show them something with very high confidence that it's going to work. It's really the customer development and that relationship there.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we have a few more minutes for questions. Are we? Okay. Okay.
In a high-margin medical device product, doing a cost reduction of 25% on one component, does that really move the needle for the customer versus your second offering or your third offering, or is this more about throughput, that they're only able to make so much and there's much more demand in a backlog?
It does move it's a 1.2% gross margin change for our customers. The overall device cost of the implantable unit is about $10,000, so we're looking at a 7% reduction in the device cost. And it's doubtful they'd pass it on to their end users because the insurance codes have already been established. But more than that, I mean, it is improving the throughput, but we can add more electrodes for that same cost point. And we know, like with semiconductors, we're going to have price erosion over time.
Yeah. It's more kind of getting them initially with the cost savings. It's kind of motivating them to adopt the technology. But most of our customers have already, said it's a performance that we're really after, but MEMS is an early stage area. You want to get them comfortable. They want to know that you can produce over time, and they want a financial benefit to working with you early stage.
Another question is, do your patents block anyone from being able to use these FDA biocompatible materials in a MEMS setting?
No, they're more specific patents. So we're using silicone. There's other MEMS devices that use silicone for other applications. Is that the application we're using it for, the material we're using it for, and how we're actually building up that material. We have a very efficient way, a very cost reduction way of doing this processing.
Got it. So then no one can copy your exact product.
Yeah.
But
or platform.
What can you block others from being able to do?
So we can block others from, say, another NeuroNexus is one of our competitors. They do only silicon devices now and polyimide devices. Both are toxic materials. We can block them from saying, oh, we want to make a medical-grade silicone material device now using this technique. They can't do it. So they can't make a neurostimulator lead and sell to the clinical market, using silicone.
And one of the other keys we want to highlight is it's not only that, we have the patents in place. Once we get pre-market approval or a 510K on these devices with our customers, that's another blockage for competitors, because our competitors are going to have to come in and significantly undercut our margins because they can't beat us on performance at that point. So we have levers to protect ourselves.
Yeah.
Okay, Ricardo?
Do you use cats in clinical trials because they have 9 lives?
They only have 2 ears.
So on the cochlear space, which you've pointed out is the largest market, and in terms of the I guess, ultimately the efficacy of your approach using an array or more touch points to ultimately deliver better hearing. Do you have any other experts, more in the medical field, other than folks at the University of Michigan, that are saying, wow, this approach should, at least theoretically, work better? I'll give you an example. Do you know about Dr. Zhang at UC Irvine? That's a well-known school for cochlear.
Yeah, actually Dr. Middlebrooks at UC Irvine now. He's excellent neuroscientist in this area, and we did collaborations with him on animal tests. He used to be at Michigan and went over. But there's actually a lot of research over, even over since the 80s, that has suggested more electrodes gives an improvement in sound. It's just that they haven't had a physical device to do it. So there's a lot of modeling they've done. There's a lot of, they take 2 electrodes and hand assemble and try and put them closer together and do that way.
So that's not being questioned. It's can you get it down to the...
Yeah, so can you get it down?
The product design be done and manufacturing yields.
There's always skeptics in any field, but there's a lot of data that suggests you can get it. And then Advanced Bionics did 128 virtual sites, and they're able to show a significant sound quality improvement with that virtual site system versus their 16-site electrode.
It's pure, they're trying to do signal processing, so they're not able to do the same thing we could do with real sites.
Okay.
And then one of the other aspects is the spinal cord stimulators. As we add more electrodes, it allows us to refine the setup of the device and change the therapy over time to adapt. So if the device slightly moves, you can retune it. And they're actually moving from 4 to 16 to 20 electrodes there.
Calibrate and see where...
Exactly, to account for drift over time.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I would kind of follow up from a couple of things you said. On the patent, I'll go back to the patent for a second. Yeah. When you were talking about use of funds of the $500,000, one of the elements was patents. So could you clarify where you are with patents and what patents, what you need yet to spend money on?
Yeah, so it's a patent through the University of Michigan, and when we negotiate the license with it, you have to pay the back patent fees. Well, there's a few things you negotiate: back patent fees, royalties, upfront costs. And so it's about $30K for the national patent, and about $300,000 for international.
No,
so it's reimbursement.
Okay. And another quick follow-up. You talked about Cochlear. They were a research partner of yours?
Initially, early stage research.
So typically, if you've had some relationship with a company like that, you'd kind of move that forward into a sales and marketing opportunity. It would seem strange to me that did something go wrong and you've decided to go somewhere else?
We're still very much so engaged with them, but it's more from a strategic standpoint of going with the smaller player because we feel we can get our technology out to market quicker. We're not totally turning away from Cochlear.
Are they banging on your door and saying, no, you ought to be coming with us?
Right now we have devices at it, and if they're banging on the door and they say that, and they're offering to give us the right price, yes, but we feel we can put ourselves in a much better leverage position by going with the smaller player first. But it is a little bit tricky because we still want to be engaged with Cochlear because that will be a second customer. So we're trying to negotiate that now.
We want that 60% market share they have.
Yeah.
Sure.
Along the same lines, who on your staff is worrying the relationships that might lead to an exit? Do you have somebody, or who's really doing the business development, and are you positioning yourself? So you've got this little company you're dealing with now. You have the big giant, but the little company isn't going to make the big giant nervous. Yeah. What are you doing about making sure there's his step cousin?
So actually we have our first and second customers are in the cochlear space. In the second segment, we're looking at something with spinal cord stimulators, Boston Scientific, Medtronic, St. Jude. We're actually going to be very strategic on that second segment because those are all potential acquirers. Right. Those guys wouldn't bat an eye at buying a company like this.
Yeah. But we're also seeking somebody in the business development phase. We realize that's a need in our company.
Yes.
We need somebody in that that has experience in the medical device space, knows about how these work.
So your next hire, senior hire, would in fact be somebody in biz dev?
Correct.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, well, thank you very much. University of Michigan MEMStim.
Thanks.
That was a great presentation. Okay, so now we're just going to take a couple minutes, get the next team set up, but thanks again. It was a great presentation.